The ISFORMULA function is an incredibly easy function to understand, but it's so useful I tend to use it on almost every consulting project that I do. Let me explain why. So ISFORMULA's job is very simple. It asks a question, is the cell that I'm looking at filled with a formula or something that's not a formula? If I go to cell I6, I'm going to want to know whether the total cost over here in cell H6 is the result of multiplying the unit cost times the quantity, or if it's just a static number value. Because if it's a static number value and I were to change the quantity, I wouldn't be able to see the cost change. So in cell I6, I can go to the Formulas tab at the top of the screen, go to the More Functions drop-down menu, and choose Information, and sure enough, there is ISFORMULA. You click on ISFORMULA and you choose the cell reference right there, and it comes back true, and I'll click OK here, and I will autofill this down, and you can see that yes, all of these are true. But let's say that right here, where it says 800, instead of calculating that it's 800, I'll type in 800. And as you can see, it switches over to false. Now, I said I use this in a lot of consulting projects, but I don't use it this way. Instead, I use this basic premise that the ISFORMULA function will return either true or false to do some color coding. Here's how that works. You highlight all the cells that you'd like to color code. In this case, from cell H6 down to cell H34. You go to the Home tab at the top of the screen and use the Conditional Formatting drop-down menu. But none of these options, highlight cell rules or top-bottom rules, does what I need it to do. Instead, I'm going to choose New Rule. And I'm going to use the option here, Use a Formula to determine which cells to format. Now, the first part of this that's important is we're going to put in $ISFORMULA, open the parentheses, and if you were to click on cell H6 right here, we would have a problem for this conditional formatting. Because as you can see, it puts the dollar signs around H6. And that means it will always, in every row of this data set, figure out if it's H6 that is or is not a formula. Instead, what I want to be able to do is apply it to cell H6 and then copy it onto all the rest. So I need to make sure that there are no dollar signs on H6 here, and I can do that by pressing the F4 key a couple of times until it just says H6. And then I close the parentheses. But there is one other problem here, and that is the ISFORMULA function comes back as true if it is a formula. But I want the opposite. I want it to say true if it's not a formula, and I want it to say false if it is a formula. So the way to do that is to put the ISFORMULA function inside of the not function. So I put NOT and open the parentheses before ISFORMULA, and I close the parentheses after this, and now it's going to do the inverse, right? It's going to say, hey, if it's not a formula, let's color code that cell. Finally, I click on Format here, and I choose a fill color, perhaps, that will really stand out for me. And when I click OK and click OK, you can see that that one value right there is highlighted in red. If somebody were to accidentally type in $1,500 in the cell, it would instantly turn red on us. So again, I don't use the I column over here with its little trues and falses, but instead, when something absolutely positively needs to be calculated, I use it for conditional formatting.